All right, let's talk about something that is so frustrating. You know that feeling? You've got this brilliant idea, you can see it perfectly, you absolutely have the skills to pull it off, and yet you're just staring at a blank screen. If you're someone who considers yourself a high achiever, but you just can't seem to get started on things, well, you're going to want to stick around for this. I mean, it's a deeply frustrating question, isn't it? You know exactly what you need to do. The whole plan is right there in your head. Maybe you've even mapped it all out. But that gap between thinking about it and actually doing it, it can feel like a giant canyon. So what is actually going on here? Okay, let's dive right into this. Because this right here, this is the core idea we are unpacking. The procrastination that so many smart people feel, it's not a character flaw. It's not because you're lazy. It's actually a direct byproduct of having a brain that's, well, a little too complex for its own good. And that brings us to what we can call the smart procrastinator's paradox. This isn't about laziness or bad time management. Nope. It's a struggle that comes from the way your mind is wired. So what does that actually mean? Well, psychology tells us the real bottleneck here is something called cognitive and emotional regulation. See, your mind isn't just looking at a simple task. It's seeing this entire universe of possibilities and potential failures and all the consequences, all at the same time. The real challenge is just trying to manage all of that internal noise.
So, how does this actually show up in real life? Let's break down the 5 specific psychological traps that a complex mind can fall into. The very things that cause that frustrating paralysis.
Okay, trap number 1 is what psychologists call hyperconnectivity. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Some people might see a task as just a straight line, point A to point B. But your brain, it sees a sprawling, complicated map. It's automatically connecting every single potential roadblock, every resource you might need, and every possible future problem, all before you've even taken the first step. And this illustrates the difference perfectly. On the left, you've got this simple view. Write a report. Easy enough, right? But on the right, that's what a hyperconnected brain sees. It's not just one task. It's this whole ecosystem of research, outlining, finding data, checking sources, anticipating questions. And that complex web on the right, that is the mental overload that freezes you before you even type a single word. All right, trap number 2 is a classic case of a strength turning into a weakness. It's called high cognitive reflection. This is that powerful ability you have to question your first instinct, to analyze everything, the tone, the emotion, the logic, before you actually do anything. And look, while that's a key part of being a great problem solver, it can also lead you straight into the dreaded analysis paralysis. So what's really happening under the hood here is that your brain is running these super complex risk assessments in milliseconds. You're not being slow. You're weighing consequences that other people might not even notice. And it's that intense level of analysis that can make even a simple action feel incredibly heavy, like it's packed with risk. Okay, now this next trap is really interesting. It's called metacognition, which is basically the ability to think about your own thinking. It means you're acutely aware of your own flaws, your own blind spots, and all the things you don't know. And while that sounds like a good thing, and it is, that kind of intellectual humility can make it really, really hard to feel confident enough to even start. So think about it like this. You're not actually avoiding the work. What you're avoiding is the feeling of producing something that doesn't match up to that perfect, flawless version you've imagined in your head. Your internal standards are just so high that the simple act of starting can feel like you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. Okay, be honest. Does this list look familiar? Watching a business podcast, researching some new software, organizing your files for the 10th time. You feel like you're being productive, right? You tell yourself, I'm learning, I'm preparing. But what this really is a very sophisticated kind of avoidance. And that leads us straight to trap number 4. The technical term for this is escape behavior. What's happening is your brain is using all this high-level educational stuff to get a quick little hit of dopamine and to hide from the discomfort of the task you actually need to do. So you're not just watching to learn, you're watching to avoid. And the 5th and final trap is something called low social dependency. A lot of deep thinkers just don't need external validation to feel good about themselves. And because of that, a lot of the usual motivators, like deadlines or social pressure, they just don't really work. The only judge that matters is the one in your own head. And the result of that? Well, unless you have a really powerful internal spark, like genuine curiosity or passion for something, your brain's default setting is just thinking. It's solitude and reflection. It's almost always going to choose thinking over doing because there isn't an outside force strong enough to push it into action. Okay, so after outlining all of that complexity, all of those mental traps, the big question is, what can you actually do about it? Well, the answer, believe it or not, is surprisingly simple. Let's talk about the 1% solution. Seriously, how do you get that amazing, complex, hyper-connected brain of yours to just stop analyzing and start doing? How do you finally break that cycle of overthinking and inaction? The answer comes from the Japanese concept of kaizen. All it means is focusing on tiny, 1% continuous improvements. So instead of looking at the whole overwhelming project, you just shift your focus to one tiny, achievable step. This is brilliant because it lets you get started without triggering that big threat response in your brain that massive tasks always do. That's it. Just 1%. Forget the finish line. Stop thinking about the mountain of work ahead of you. Just focus on the single, tiniest step you can take right now. I'm talking draft one email, write one sentence, find one source. That is how you begin. And this really brings us to the most important takeaway of all. This is all about reframing how you think about your own mind. It is a powerful, powerful tool. It is not a prison. So, if you only remember one thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this. Your ability to think so deeply and to see all that complexity, that is a gift. It is not a curse. Don't let your amazing inner world become a prison of overanalysis. You are allowed to start before you're ready. I'll say it again. You are allowed to start before you feel fully ready. So, I'm going to leave you with a question. And I don't want you to think about tomorrow or next week. What is the 1% step, the single smallest action that you can take right now to move forward? Because that, right there,